into this.
Well, we promise your tech that we'll be on at 7 o'clock without music, so we try to get it, make it do what it needs.
Good deal.
Yes,
Good deal. Good deal.
Right. Would you introduce your platform?
Yeah. Well, to our listening audience and our viewers on WeBelieveDigital.com, it is a pleasure and an honor to be here in the studio tonight. And to be in this particular time slot is tremendously important. And we're going to talk about this time slot and what it has meant across the years and how the community is dependent upon Charles Evans and this time slot and what he stood for and how courageous he was in doing that. And it's an honor for me to come on at this time slot to continue on some of the work that he was doing.
Okay. And we actually, hopefully, if everything goes well, we got an awesome show lined up tonight, some powerful guests that we're expecting to call in tonight. And part of it is the fact that these conversations are straight in the vein of what you've been talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm focused. I'm one-dimensional. You know, my focus and my belief is that the solution to our problem lies in economic development and economic opportunity for African Americans. That's solely what I focus on, and I have been doing that now for some 40 years and will continue to do that as long as I have breath.
Okay, and you got an icon and a legend, man. I tell you, tonight I am honored. I'm gonna let you introduce this gentleman. I've been running him down. We talked, maybe 2 or 3 months ago?
Yes.
But it took Mr. Socrates Garrett to get him in the studio. Mr. Garrett?
Well, he's a real trooper. He's an individual that has been on the battlefield for 40 years. He happens to be an Alcorn graduate, an Alcorn Knight.
We don't hold that against him.
No, we can't hold that against it. Charles Evans was an Alcorn Knight, and so was Socrates Garrett. So we understand the role that we play in this community. But this young man has fought this fight for so long that he's done so much with so little until now he is attempting the impossible with absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
And so it's an honor for me to introduce my guest, my co-host, my co-pilot, Robert Hickenbottom.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Garrett. I appreciate you saying that. It's been so long since I've been on WMPR. In fact, it's been over 2 years or more since I've been in the studio, and it's changed so much. And it's just an honor to be with you. And I've been absent, but I've still been staying in touch. And I'm so happy to be associated with We Believe Digital Podcast Global. I've been on with you for a couple of weeks, and I'm happy to announce, I don't know if you know exactly, but starting next Wednesday from 10 to 11, I'm going to be going live every Wednesday from 10 to 11 on We Believe Digital Global.com. And the name of my show is going to be Getting Down to the Hickenbottom. What that means is we're going to get to the bottom of stuff. We're not going to insult anybody. I'm too polite to insult you. I may do it in a dignified way, but I think at the end and the final analysis, I don't like to use the word end of the day, but in the final analysis, I think you'll be laughing and happy, and we'll all make a joke about it. But you know, I'm just not going to do that. And I want to commend and thank Mr. Garrett for his work over the last 40 years. Recently, 2 years ago, I ran for governor, and quite honestly, I ran because one particular candidate that I just despised, and I couldn't allow him to just walk away and with no challenge. And there's no need of haggling over it, good, bad, or indifferent. I did it. And I went to 72 of 82 counties. I made a lot of friends. And after it was all said and done, I ended up becoming a tire distributor. The wealthiest guy in the state made me a tire distributor. I'm the only black person I know in the Southeast, or maybe even in the country, that's a major tire distributor. I sell any kind of tire made except airplane tires or motorcycle tires, and I'm on a state contract. And what that means is that you can buy, I believe, Mr. Garrett, up to $1 million worth of tires with just a bid, because they've already been pre-bidded, pre-sold on a state contract. So we're in that business. And when I got in there, I didn't know a thing in the world about it. So the first person I thought about, well, let me just take this to Mr. Garrett. And sure enough, when I came in, he took me on his wing. He mentored and put me with the right people, put the right people around me. And even I, met with all these people, and we started off. Unfortunately, we started in March of 2020, 1 week before the COVID-19 crisis hit. Is basically when we started, and it's been a challenge since then. But Mr. Garrett, I appreciate everything you've done, and I like the way you said, and I know when you started, I followed your career, I had bought into that story too, because every time I go in meetings, and like you, I work both sides. I work with anybody that asked me to work with them, and but your name was coming up all the time in the black community. Well, boy, in the last 3 years, it doesn't matter whether I'm at the River Hills Country Club or wherever I am, the first name going to come out of people's mouth is not Billy Munger or Legal Speed, it's Socrates Garrett, and how much money you made. And so finally I said, well, Henry Ford made all the money, and Bill Gates, $90 million didn't stop them. That was just a chump change. But anyway, I'm really happy that you are helping me and mentoring me, and you teaching me so much about the black struggle. I never knew much about the black struggle because I was fortunate enough to get to the Midwest, and I hit the trail running, and I didn't even look up. So thank you so much.
It's good to have you here. We're going to talk. We're going to talk about what's going on in this community. We got to hold our elected officials accountable. Now, you hear that often on radio talk shows, and you hear that from elected officials as well, that we got to hold everybody accountable. The problem is we don't know how to hold people accountable. We don't know exactly what is required of them in the first place. And so when you don't know or don't have an expectation for individuals, then you can't come back and hold them accountable. So we're going to deal with all of those kinds of things, and we're going to talk about, how to hold people accountable and how to get our folk involved. The problem in our community today is really focused. The problem today is between the African-American elected official and the African-American business person. That's what the struggle is today. I think we have a call. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Angela Turner Ford. I was calling in, I think, for an interview.
Yes, Ms. Ford. It's good to have you on the line. We're going to be talking tonight about some things that are going on in our community, and certainly a person of your caliber and in your position, it's important that you share with the community what the plans are for the caucus, and what the plans as you see it, and what the issues are as you see it, and how we try to improve the conditions for our people. So introduce yourself to our listening audience, if you will. Tell them who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much. My name is Angela Turner Ford. I am the senator for Senate District 16, which consists of all of Clay County. I also represent portions of Lowndes, Noxubee, and Oktibbeha counties. I have been a member of the state Senate since January of 2013. I'm also chair of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus. The Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus consists of senators and members of the House of Representatives. We span various districts throughout the state, and we do try to come together for a common sense of purpose to represent those constituents who don't have the strongest voice in the Capitol, but we know that we've been sent there to represent them, and we have a job to do. We take that seriously.
Well, it's critical that you do take it seriously. It's critical because of the condition of our people. And, you know, we just don't seem to get any relief, Ms. Ford. We don't get the economic dollars from the CARES Act, et cetera. It does not seem to get down to our people. Can you hold 1 second?
Sure.
Caller, you're on the air.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're back, Ms. Ford. So if the economics don't get down to our people, in your mind, what is blocking it, and what is it that we need to try and do to open that flow?
I think a lot of what we see in the state of Mississippi is based on, I would say, positions regarding policy. And
hold on a second, Ms. Ford.
Yes.
Okay, continue.
We see differences in policy perspectives. There are those who believe that, you know, government services are too broadly offered. Government is too large, and they want to shrink government.
Trey, hold on just a second. Go ahead, Ms. Ford.
Yes.
Go ahead.
There are those who want government to shrink, but I think, you know, what we have to keep in mind that if that's the case, then there are fewer people who are going to be served. And I would say those of us who oppose those positions want, you know, MDOC, we want the Department of Human Services, we want Medicaid, we want our Department of Education, we want those agencies properly staffed so that they are in a position to accommodate constituents. But not just that, when it comes to spending, we want to make sure that those dollars reach all aspects of the community.
Ms.
We're
Ford,
operating under a supermajority, but, you know, still we're there to voice our opinion, to state opposition, and to try to funnel those dollars to the people we represent.
Yeah, okay. Hold on a second, Ms. Ford.
Yes.
I believe we have on the line with us Mr. Trey Baker. He's a senior advisor for public engagement, the Office of Public Engagement. Mr. Baker, are you with us?
I am. How you doing, Socrates?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I can't complain.
Well,
Just, you know, we got some good news out of D.C., so happy to share it with you.
Well, we're looking forward to that. And so this is our first show tonight, so I'm learning these telephones and how they operate, so you guys bear with me a little bit. Now, engineer, is Ms. Ford still on the line as well?
Yeah, she's still there.
Oh, can you hear
Yes,
me?
I'm still
Okay,
here.
okay, so
I
we're all here. So tell us a little bit about life in D.C., Mr. Baker, a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you are in Jackson.
Well, I am a Mississippi native. I'm from Grenada, Mississippi, as a matter of fact. And prior to coming to the White House, I was the city manager in Grenada, followed by being the national director of African American engagement for the Biden for President campaign. And now I'm senior advisor for public engagement at the White House. And you know, on today to talk about the bipartisan infrastructure bill that just got passed in the House, and that the president is going to sign into law on Monday. It's a once-in-a-generation investment in the nation's infrastructure. Cities like Jackson, Mississippi will benefit tremendously from this. We're talking about roads and bridges. We're talking about expanding access to rail, clean drinking water, high-speed internet, all those things that we need down there in Mississippi. And so that's why I wanted to make sure I called in tonight and talk to the folks in Jackson.
Well, we certainly need as much information as we can to come to this community for those of us that sometimes have lost hope, don't see really any improvements in the conditions in not only our streets and roads and bridges, but, you know, we have some deteriorations in our schools. Our education system is challenged. And quite frankly, Mr. Baker and Ms. Ford, I think that the low turnout is a direct correlation to the hopelessness in our people. What do you guys say to that?
I agree, absolutely. I think part of it, we do have to make sure that, you know, our constituents are informed, but there is a sense of hopelessness. But I think the good things that we're seeing coming out of the Biden administration with the American Rescue Plan dollars, that monies are going directly to cities and counties. And I would hope that they see that as a ray of hope. There's still more for the state to do, but we're thankful for the attention that we're receiving out of the White House.
Tell us a little bit on how dollars flow down from the CARES Act money from D.C. How educate us on how dollars flow from D.C. to the state, down to our school systems, to the lowest rung?
Well, I think it depends on the mechanism of the funding. I believe what we've seen with the American Rescue Plan is there are actually disbursements that have gone out to cities and counties. They've received the first half. Of course, there are restrictions on how those monies are to be spent. But unlike what we have to deal with on the state government, typically the assistance that we receive, the state of Mississippi, from the federal government, it is allocated or left to the legislature to appropriate. And I think that's where you start to see some of the, the bottleneck, if you will, problems with funds going or being equally distributed throughout the state. But based on the policymakers that are in Jackson and the needs that we prioritize as a group, that's where you tend to see how funds are spent, depending on if it's a highway project or if it's some sort of educational need. We decide as a legislature the budget for the state of Mississippi.
Right.
Comparing what generally comes from the federal government basis versus what we have the opportunity, I would say, as counties and cities to expand now, it's a stark difference. And hopefully counties and cities will utilize this opportunity to transform their communities.
All right, Mr. Baker, is it possible for the federal government to make direct appropriations to black entities like black cities?
Well, that's what's happening already. Is that these are direct dollars that have gone out to. When you talk about the American Rescue Plan, you're talking about direct dollars that went to schools, to communities, to cities, to be able to prop them up and to rescue some of these cities after the COVID-19 pandemic. The push for, it was more than shots in arms and money in pockets in the American Rescue Plan. It was, across the board, setting the funds necessary to get people back in school. One great example of what's happened is with, historically black colleges and universities. In the American Rescue Plan, there was $4.2 billion in funding for HBCUs that schools like Tougaloo and Jackson State have been able to take advantage of to get back into the classroom. Additionally, there was $1.6 billion in funding for capital finance forgiveness for HBCUs that across the country universities have been able to take advantage of. And so we have been able to, through the American Rescue Plan, give that direct funding to institutions that affect black people and black people's lives specifically. And then you're going to get, more of that same thing in the bipartisan infrastructure deal that's about to be signed. That's going to be direct funding that's going to go to communities and be able to help folks all across the country. And then this is the other thing I'll add to that. You still have the Build Back Better agenda that's to be voted on here soon. That's your human infrastructure plan. That's going to be your, more funds for education. This is going to be where your, more than $2 billion for HBCUs will be a part of that program. It'll be healthcare costs getting lowered through that program. It'll be 3- and 4-year-olds being able to go to pre-K. And so that's all going to be direct, direct funding that's available to communities of color, communities like Jackson. And then you put on top of that something else. You put on top of that the fact that the president is committed to, upping by 50% minority contractors across the country. And so not only do you have this influx of funding from these various pieces of legislation, but also this renewed push from SBA and from the administration to make sure that minority contractors are a part of this push.
Should there be more information from the entities that are receiving these funds about the availability and the opportunities, and because I don't hear much about the recipients of funds to the community. And I think there's more dollars in our community than ever in the history of our communities currently right now today. But we don't hear much about how those dollars are being spent and how the community should get involved in that project. Are we missing an opportunity to have the information disseminated from the recipients?
Well, I mean, that's part of what we're doing now. We're trying to go to, we're sending myself, the Director of the Office of Public Engagement, Cedric Richmond, and others are out all across the country right now talking to people and make sure they have the information. If people don't have the information, they can link in with the whitehouse.gov website. But also, we have stakeholder calls. We did one today explaining what the bipartisan infrastructure deal is. I do one each and every Friday where we have different members of the administration come on and tell people the information. Last week, Secretary Marcia Fudge was on. This week, we're going to have Karine Jean-Pierre, who's the Principal Deputy White House Press Secretary, to come and tell us some more about what's going on. So we're, I think it's vitally important, Socrates, for folks to be able to get this information and put it out. And I can send to you and distribute my information for people who may want to get on my listserv in particular. We can figure out on the back end how we can get people connected, and I can send you a link that you can send out to your folks so folks have this information. Because that's the thing. So many times it's not about the resources being out there. It's about our communities having the information that they need to access the resources. So I think you're right on point, and it's very important for us, and that's why we're crisscrossing, the airwaves right now, trying to make sure folks know.
And Trey, I think I talked to Erica. You got about 2 more minutes, so we're going to allow you to go ahead and make your last comments and share with us anything that you believe that we need to know. Again, we want to appreciate you and let Erica know we thank God for her and the relationship to be able to have a direct connection with the White House. Mr. Garrett, this feels like the Charles Evans days.
That's what we need.
Huh?
We need someone to have the relationship that Charles had, that's for
that's
sure.
It, and it
so
looks
let's
like
do
it's
it.
happening tonight. So
Let's do it.
if you will, as you get ready, Trey, just let us know. And then, Ms. Ford, we're going to be right back with you. And certainly, and I'm not going to even get into the fact that we didn't get out of the abundance money in Mississippi, Trey, when it comes down to the black community, black contracts. We're going to hold that for another conversation. But what we want to do this time, and I said it to somebody today, Mr. Garrett, we want to get in front of this money. Information is power, and we want our people prepared and ready to do this work. Trey, I yield back to you for your last comments.
Yeah, we're going to make ourselves available to communities, to cities like Jackson. I know the First Lady came down to Jackson earlier this year. We want you to understand that there are resources that are going to be out here to help the community, and we want to be a resource to you. And actually, in my last bit of time here, I'll just compliment the senator on the work that she's doing down in Mississippi. We know it's a hard a hard fight down there. And I also want to compliment her on being one of the first individuals in Mississippi to support then Vice President Biden during the 2020 campaign. So that's something that we don't forget. So y'all have really good people down there advocating for you who can, who are directly linked into us also. So just thank you for the opportunity for coming on. And I'm happy to come back anytime.
All right. Ms. Ford, did you want to make any comments before Mr. Trey get off?
I would just thank you so much, Trey, for your kind words this evening, and I certainly look forward to getting on some of those informational calls on Fridays. I think it's tremendous that you all are providing this type of outreach for just everyday constituents so that they can be informed, and we will know how to lobby and seek assistance in the future. So thank you for everything that you're doing, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Trey and Ms. Ford, you can also go to WeBelieveDigital.com, and you can see this show as well, and it will be archived there for prosperity. And so I want you to check that out. And it also is a platform that's teaming with WMPR. We're here tonight working in this tandem, and we're expecting great things from these two entities. So check that out and give us some feedback.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, Ms. Ford, hang on just a second. I'm going to let Trey go.
Sure.
Trey, go ahead and hang up. All right. And Mr. Hickenbottom, what say you?
Well, I'm just sitting here listening and learning. I'm just impressed, and I like what I hear here. And we just wait, and as soon as this thing is passed and disseminated down to the state level, we're going to be in front of it.
All right, Ms. Ford, I didn't want to tie up Mr. Trey with the conversation, but and we're not going to keep you long. Out of the money that was received in the state of Mississippi, do you have a rough estimate of what the state of Mississippi is still in possession of that they have not spent, that may be available for different issues that we're faced with in the state?
Well, as far as I know, the amount that was received, I think it was $1.8 billion that the state of Mississippi received for the state to appropriate and allocate. As far as I know, none of it has been expended. And I heard as of late that the lieutenant governor has appointed a committee to receive testimony and to make recommendations on how the state is to expend its money. We have two members of the CAUCUS who have been named to that committee, Senator Albert Butler and Senator Hillman Frazier. And so we want to make sure as members of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, we engage them, we present them with our ideas, and they can keep us informed. But that will be the work that the legislature will have to do when we show up in January for the beginning of the 2022 session. So that's a big ticket item that we will have to deal with to help Mississippi recover from the coronavirus pandemic. And no need is too big or too small. I think it's all important. All issues need to be on the table, and we need to make sure that our concerns are voiced.
All right, one last question. I'm going to yield to Mr. Garrett and Mr. Hickenbottom. In the last funding, in some of the funding, was it $40 million set aside for minorities? And help me if I'm saying something that's not true.
Are you referring to the Build Back to Business program that the legislature passed? I think was that earlier. I think that was back when the CARES Act money first came to the state, yes. And that was to help businesses recover that suffered closures and et cetera. And it's my understanding that money just did not make it to our communities as it was supposed to.
Okay. All right, I'm done, you all. Look, Ms. Garrett?
Yeah, it was just the process was so much bureaucracy in the process. African-American business people, certainly weren't aware on how to apply, et cetera. And so we didn't get a lot of participation from the black business community in that first go-around. And I wasn't sure if those dollars were even going back to Washington, if they were not allocated or not, Ms. Ford.
They did not go back to Washington. I think the final legislation that we passed for those funds that were not realized by various businesses, they were, rolled over into the Mississippi Department Employment Commission.
Employment.
Basically, Unemployment Security Commission. I'm getting kind of confused with my acronym.
Yeah.
But that money was basically swept by that particular entity or that particular agency. And so it was just underutilized, I believe, by businesses that really could have benefited from it. But I think that part of it was that the hurdle was so high. It was just difficult for our businesses to be in position to meet the requirements that were in place. That's no fault of the business owners, but I just don't think it was realistic in what we expected the businesses to present to receive the funds.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you came back and made an adjustment to the process a little bit later on in the game and relaxed some of the restrictions that help more businesses get involved. But you know, Ms. Ford,
it was still so little, so late.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. That's so true. Too little, too late for sure. And then, you know, I know we're going to let you go, but then to have the dollars, you know, swept from the account to go to minority businesses, to move it over in the Department of Employment Security, and then later on have the government end the unemployment benefits to our citizens. I just don't get it, Ms. Ford.
Okay, well, look, we got to go. We got another call. Ms. Ford, thank you so much, and we'll continue.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Bye.
Thank you.
Carter, you're on there. Go ahead. Carter, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
So, that was great what the young lady said and everything. I'm just flabbergasted because how can we as businesses apply for funds that we're not educated enough to know that we're not educated. We're not even aware that those funds are available. So, yeah, and then the money goes back to what she said, and correct me if I'm wrong, it goes back to help those unemployed. So we all need help, right? I'm nothing against people who are unemployed for things out of their control. However, we have to do a better job in the state of Mississippi to tell people who are small businesses that there are funds available. This is how you apply. This is how you get them. This is what is required so that the small businesses can keep employing people. I had no idea that there was, I think you guys said $40 million that are available to small businesses, and yet we couldn't get them because we didn't know that they even freaking existed. That is ridiculous.
Well, let me say this. If you roll back to the black farmer settlement, if you go back and look at the first black farmer settlement, where $3 billion in Washington by white senators was set aside in an account for black folks. And that $3 billion didn't make it to the black community.
Well, it's the same thing happened with the heirs money.
Heirs money.
So we have a history of not getting back there. But thank you so much, Carla, for your comments.
But now, Ms. Garrett, how do we get in front? Keep in mind, they've been talking about this bill for months, and now the bill has passed. They already signed it into law. How do we position ourselves?
Well, we're going to do a better job of education, but, you know, I want to spend some time tonight as well talking about some things that are just really, you know, hard-pressed on my heart that we need to talk about a little bit. So I want to spend some time and talk about this Veterans Day we got coming tomorrow. And I want to talk about the contributions that African Americans have made to this country. And, you know, as veterans, the sacrifice and the commitment that we've made, and the outlook for veterans and what we had to go through, and the post-traumatic syndrome, PTSD, that we suffered from, all of the folk that came back out of Vietnam. All of the African-American veterans deserve a round of applause. All veterans deserve, you know, salute. But those of us in the African-American community, we need to give a special gratitude to and thanks to for the service, and apologize for the difficulty that they've had getting back into society and never having the opportunity to reach mainstream. So if you're a veteran out there tonight, I want you to call in. I want you to tell us a little bit about your service and the background and the history of the things that you endured and suffered through, and how you feel about your service. So give us a call. The call-in numbers are, what are the call-in numbers over there, hand the man?
On the wall.
Yes, it's 948-5950. 958-5835.
948-5835 or 948-5950. So we want to talk about some of those kinds of things, and then just talk about Charles Evers in this hour a little bit, and why this is so important, Bob. You know, I met Charles Evers in 1966 down at Alcorn State University when he led a march out of Fayette, Mississippi through the entire campus of Alcorn. And one thing I remember about Charles that I'll never forget is that there were all kinds of hate signs and Klansmen and everything around him that you could imagine. And the man had absolutely zero fear, Bob. He marched, he stood his ground, he came when his brother was gunned down. He came and he picked up that flag so that his brother's work wouldn't be in vain. He sacrificed his life and what he was doing at the time in Chicago and came down here and picked up that mantle and carried it on to the end. And so we owe a deep, deep debt of gratitude to the Evers family and the sacrifices that they have made so that we'd have an opportunity to be in these elected positions, have an opportunity to be in Washington, D.C., have an opportunity to be, you know, chairman of Ford with the Black Caucus. We owe a great debt of gratitude to Charles for that, and this is his hour. And I knew, and many of you out there didn't know, but I've always known that the day was coming when it was going to fall to my lot to pick up that mantle, that baton, and try to move this thing forward. I knew it in the days with Charles Tisdale on Friday nights on Views from the Black Side on Wmpr. I knew it then. I didn't want to pick this up. I wanted to be a businessman that was out there dealing with contracts for goods and services, hiring people, employing people, making deals, traveling all across the country, all across the world, running projects. But I knew that ultimately, you know, this is what I had to do. I knew that I had been prepared for it, and now we're going to do the best job that we possibly can to advance this community forward. We're going to put some serious effort in doing that. Hold on a minute, caller. What line is that?
Do you want to take it?
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
Caller, you on the air.
How's everybody doing?
Hey, Miss Silky, how you doing?
Silky?
Yeah.
I'm blessed. I'm truly blessed. I would like to say this. Let me rephrase this. If some of us are so thankful for Mr. Evers and his brothers and his Fannie Lou Hamer and all these people, we are still killing one another. So we must not be that thankful. You know, and it really hurts me and bothers me when we go killing one another, shooting one another for nothing. I just don't understand that. It's something wrong with us mentally. And I won't say all of us. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, if we really want to thank Mr. Evers and all the rest of them, let's stop all this killing and stealing. Unnecessary mess. But I'm going to say peace out.
Thank you.
And I really thank you guys.
Thank you now for calling. Yeah, we are in dark times. You know, we have a lot of negative things going on in our community. But it wasn't because of the fight that our foreparents and our ancestors fought. They took the fight and they fought it hard. And they got us to this point, and they brought us this far. And yet, at this point in time, you know, the future doesn't look as good for African-American children as it did back in our day, Bob. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, you know, my view is a lonely view, but I will give it. And I subscribe to the same theory that Mr. Evers did. we got to get a little tougher on these criminals. I know the ACLU and the NAACP and a few more are going to holler, but it's going to have to come down.
Turn your radio down, caller.
It's just going to come down to whether or not we really have the nerve.
Yeah.
We really have the.
Hold on a minute, caller. Go ahead, Bob.
I guess it's going to come down to, do we really have the stomach or the mindset to really do what needs to be done? We got to get a little tougher. I don't know how. I'm not a criminologist, but here's what I do know. I do know the penologist has had a fit on us in terms of black folks, and Mr. Evers had some good ideas. They wouldn't be accepted in these times, but we may have to revisit some of those ancient.
He had some ideas. They were pretty difficult and pretty sharp at times. Caller, you're on there. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to respond to what the lady just said, but I was just thinking now the young children that are doing the killing, they don't know anything about Martin Luther King, and they know about it, but they, that's for the older people that know about Martin Luther King and Mr. Charles Evans and all that. And she said, "Why are we still killing?" That didn't make any sense to me because the young children are doing that. So thank you.
Yeah, caller. Thank you for calling. We got to do a little educating as to what's going on out here. Caller, you're on the line. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
We got to stop focusing on all this negativity of what these young folks done. We got to get on top of some of these young folks that done good and channel some of that money into them. All this money, I heard people talking about the colleges they get. Go out and reach these kids that's done good. I can't keep working. I'm so tired of hearing about these young folks killing each other, this, that, and the other. I hear nobody talking about the positive young folks in Jackson, Mississippi. It's all about these young folks that done this killing. And it ain't that many young folks done that killing. I got 4 nephews. Ain't none of them done no killing. All of them done good. So we got to focus on some positive stuff, lift up some of these young folks that's done good, and stop putting all this money into folks that's done bad. That's all the Democrats do, is try to take care of folks that's in jail and give out money. You're not going to get nothing done like that. Thank you.
Well, Carl, let me just take exception with you. You don't want to commit to fallacy of composition where a nature of the part becomes a part of the whole. Sure, we got good people that are doing great, but we got way more people, young people, that right now you can ask some 30-year-olds. They don't have a clue who Reverend Jesse Jackson is. 30-year-olds, okay? And some of these people have been to college. They don't have a clue. So you got to do something about these unfortunate or lesser fortunate children or young people that's growing up with no leadership and no guidance. Otherwise, they're going to pull the whole ship down. The good ones will just fade away. I mean, I hate to put it like that, but but that's what
I don't want our listeners out there to lose sight of how we got here, and sometimes we lose sight, and that's what has happened to our children. They are not connected to the struggle, and so that break has occurred, and we have to restore that. I'll give you just a little history now. We deal with Mississippi. Mississippi has been a terrible place for our children. And it's been a terrible place for African Americans in particular. We go all the way back to the very, very, very beginning. As many of you know or probably don't know, that this was the Choctaw Nation, that Mississippi was, the home, the headquarters of the Choctaw Nation up in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. And that nation was infiltrated. And then we progressed to a point, the day came when Caucasians in Mississippi decided that there would be no Indians in Mississippi at all. And they declared that you were going to either be black or you were going to be white. And they rounded everybody up, and they removed the blacks and whites, and then they loaded the Indians up and marched them off to Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears. We have a horrid history out here. There are instances that we have that just still haunt us today. And the worst thing that has happened to us, that we were together as black people because we had a common threat. And we knew that we had to band together to survive. We had to help each other with the crops. We had to help each other raise our children. We had to help each other to survive because we had a common enemy that was ruthless. And then we just progressed through all of those things, from Emmett Till to the murders in Philadelphia, Mississippi, to all of your own personal stories. I know I have stories. I know you got stories of traumatic things that have occurred in this community. And then we went into integration. And when we went into integration, we started to lose contact with our children because for the first time now somebody other than us are teaching them and training them. And they didn't retain the linkage to the struggle. They thought they were accepted in a new society, a post-racial society. They thought they were part of that. And so they don't know anything about Martin Luther King. They don't know about Medgar. They don't know about what happened in the Watts riots and what J. Edgar Hoover was doing to our children. They don't know what's happening to them right now in Mississippi. They don't understand why the conditions is as bad as they are, but yet you live in a community where the governor won't expand Medicaid to the unhealthy population in our state. Our children don't understand why they don't have medicine. They don't understand, why you send money back to Washington, D.C. on one hand, and then you push it over in the unemployment benefit pool on the other hand, and then you cut it off because you say people are not going to work. Why would you go to work when you make more money to stay at home than you were making when you were going, because you were working for less than a living wage? We have conditions out here that are driving the way our children are currently acting, and we got to identify them all so that we can correct this problem. But you can't correct the problem until you first put it on the table. Caller, you're on the air. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, man. I tell you heated up tonight, man. I tell you, Brother Willie, I just want to tell you, you hit the nail on the head. We preach and preach and preach about the same situation about the voting. People do not believe when they send money back to Washington and people like your governor, Tate Reeves, won't accept funds for Medicaid and all of that. That's the purpose of we trying to get people out to go vote and stop voting against your own interests. If we can get some of these Republican poor white folks, to understand that, to stop voting against their own interests. It's not only hurting us, it's hurting them just as bad. But all it is that they hate to support African American or the most qualified person in office. And you really got to heat it up tonight.
Well, thank you for calling. We really got to define the problem for our people. We got to define the problem, and now it's exacerbated by the fact that we don't know where the enemy is anymore. We see as much friendly fire from inside the race as we do from outside the race. And so we're in a bad situation here until we define it properly. We cannot come for a solution for it, Bob.
Well, just look at what happened in your situation 2 or 3 weeks ago, a month ago, where you had this major contract that was picking up the garbage, and it was an emergency situation, and the mayor had to move and gave you the contract, and people that I know personally that you did a lot for voted against you in our best interest, and you may want to talk about that.
Well, that's just an example of friendly fire. I had a situation where 2 African American city council people voted to take a contract away from an African American firm, and that hurts. That's the greatest betrayal of all times. And that's right there with Et tu, Brutus, and Peter and Jesus. That is a betrayal that will go down in history as a terrible, terrible thing. And it's not one that we can't get over. The deal is this here, and this is why it's so complicated. because while we had the portrayal by Councilman Banks and Councilman Hartley, African American council people who voted against the African American firm, we don't have the opportunity to leave them and go to white council people and expect better results. So our problem and our solution lies in the same person. So Councilman Banks and Councilman Hartley, we depend upon you to get this right, and hopefully the times that we tell you how hurt we are and how far this set us back, it will be a part of the redemption thing that has to occur so that it will never happen again. And so that's why it was referred to on this state radio station here that this is the ditch that we're going to die in. This was our Holocaust moment. This is the time that we must use this as an example throughout this entire country, that this friendly fire cannot happen. And so our conditions are going to detect and require us to do some things differently. Now, it's not a hopeless situation. Take a look at Jackson State's football team. Take a look at the difference that one man made, the coach, when prime time came into Jackson. One season he got his nose bloody. But then he began to put the right people on the bus.
Yes.
See, to correct this thing, you got to put the right people on the bus, but that's just half of it. Then you got to get the right people on the bus in the right seat.
You got to call.
Caller, you're on the air.
Mr. Garrett.
Yes.
Sherry Jones and Mr. Hickenbottom.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Carol. I'm calling from Chattanooga. I'm enjoying your program tonight. You know, speaking of Mr. Evers, if memory serves me right, it is approximately 2 years ago tonight at this prime time hour that was about the last broadcast that Mr. Charles Evers did. After, you know, and after that he got a little bit sick and everything. So I wanted to remind Mr. Garrett, if you're going to take this hour slot, I'm very proud of you for doing that. I think it will be a very quality broadcast. And thank you for allowing me to speak from Chattanooga.
Thank you for calling. Thank you for calling.
And Ms. Garrett, I also applaud you for taking this spot. There's nobody in Mississippi that deserve this spot more than you. I promise you that.
Right. Well, I tell you, you know, I have an affinity for the Evers family. Charles used to be hiding out. Yeah. Charles was running whiskey out of Philadelphia and all through Madison County, and he come down. My daddy had a sawmill, and he would hide his whiskey in the sawdust pile. And so a lot of folk were hiding out.
Now he's passed on.
Well, he told it. He told it, and so the deal is, I've known him all of my life, and so the deal is that we're honored to be here, and we're going to have tough conversations. This is not going to be an hour where we are trying to win a popularity contest. This is about how do we fix the problems that we're in. And there are a lot of great brothers and great minds and great sisters out there that have ideas and solutions that we're going to be bringing forth. But we got to define this problem. The problem today, it lies within the black community. Nobody is going to come save us. We have the ability to save ourselves, thank God. I don't require any other race to help me solve my problem, thank God. That's why I'm in Mississippi, because where I came from, there was comfort in numbers. We have the highest number of African Americans in the state of Mississippi than anywhere else in the nation. 37 to 40% of the state of Mississippi is African American. 85% of Jackson, Mississippi is African American. And there's supposed to be comfort in numbers. Bob, we're not supposed to be fighting and hating on one another. We're supposed to be strengthening and building one another. And we're going to be able to do some of those kind of things as we get this information out here tonight. I've been joined by my lovely daughter, Tamika. You have something you want to share with us?
Well, I do. So first, I'm learning a lot. This is very educational, and it also is very disturbing because since I moved back home, which is Jackson, well, actually home is Farm Haven, Canton, right? We have the same discussions over and over and over, and we as a people just simply do not get it. And me being raised partly here and partly in LA, it's just a complete different world for me. But I am excited about so many different things. God is so good. He is so good, and it's always sometimes hard to turn your cheek, right? So I know that. I was telling my friends today, God says that you are supposed to forgive people and you're supposed to turn the cheek. But he never says let people walk over you. He never said let them abuse you. He does say that revenge is mine. You don't have to worry about that. But then I look at people like Wmpr Evers. And I look at this show and I understand and I know that there are some people who really understand as you talk about numbers, that when we get together, how powerful we are, how much we can help our community, how much our businesses can grow. I know when I started Stilettos on the Pavement for women, there's way more businesses and blessings out here for all of us if we could just collaborate. And we can understand that there is really no competition other than you competing with yourself to do better and to give back, because it is a blessing and it's an obligation. We're supposed to do that. And I love the fact that WMPR and We Believe have this partnership. It's unheard of. And anybody else would say that's not going to work. That it is going to work because our common goal is to talk to, what is this, the phrase here, the voice of the community. It's to tell the community what's going on, work together, show our younger generations this is how it can be done, and work with those who are willing to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. Bob, we're getting close to the end of the show. You got any parting comments that you want to make?
I just go back to what you said. I'm like your daughter. I'm getting educated because I had no idea. You know, basically, I've been just like the Marines, kill as fast as they come over the hill. but Charles Evans told me, he said, anybody that believes in turning the other cheek has never been hit hard enough on their cheek. So
I love it.
Yeah, but let me just say it. And the way people think, this wealthy guy that put me in this business, he said, man, you're going to make so much money. I said, by you being the only black person on state contract probably in the country, and 99% of the people that buy these tires are people of color, I mean the people that you got to see, and that you're going to be buying the tire. He said, you'll be rich. He said, you'll have to have, he said, in 5 months you'll need 20 people. And that was 2 years ago.
It should be that way. It should be that way. It should be that way, for sure. All right, well, listen, we're getting ready to wrap up the show for this evening. We want you to join us each Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We're going to talk about solutions. We're going to talk about some things that are going on in our community. And we're going to give, you know, the photo of transparency. When we say that we want to hold people accountable, we got to say what it is we expected them to do that they did not do. We got to tell it just like it is, that this is an opportunity that they did not meet. And then we want to have a conversation with them about how do we correct that, not allowing that to happen again. So it's going to be a hard-hitting show. So I want you guys to lock in. And let's get ready to rock and roll on WMPR and WeBelieveDigital.com. Check us out. We're live streaming over there on We Believe Digital. Until next week, this is Socrates Garrett.
Bob Higginbottom.
And tonight, Tamika Garrett.
Signing out.